It tries to get closer to restaurant-style ramen without giving up instant convenience. That is a very different goal from the cheapest shelf-stable bowl in the aisle, and you can see the difference in the noodle itself. RAOH noodles are steam-dried rather than deep-fried. No industrial frying oil. No absorbed oil residue waiting in the strand before you even open the package. That production choice matters more than marketing ever could. It changes texture without leaning on degraded fat. It gives you a bowl that feels more like real ramen and less like a shortcut pretending to be the same thing. The broth base also relies more on liquid stock concentrates or higher quality ingredients than a cheap powder stack, which changes how the flavor lands in the bowl. The trade-off is price. RAOH costs more. That is the honest truth. But if someone in your house eats instant noodles with any regularity, the difference between a cheap bowl and a better one is small compared with the long-term cost of repeated high-sodium meals and regular fried oil intake. A few dollars more per pack can buy a noticeably better starting point. Use the same common sense rule here too. Add vegetables. Add protein. Use less of the seasoning if the flavor is already strong enough for you. If convenience is the reason you are choosing instant noodles in the first place, this is the kind of option that lets convenience stay convenient without making the meal feel like a compromise. Here is the whole picture. The brands we avoided did not all fail in the same way, but they kept showing the same pattern: heavy sodium, fried noodles, oil that has been heated too hard, seasoning systems that can hide supply chain problems until a recall happens, and in the most serious cases, a public record that shows regulators found something real enough to force action. The better options changed the starting point. They used air drying or steam drying. They reduced the oil problem before the bowl reached your kitchen. They gave you a cleaner base so you were not trying to rescue a bad formula with vegetables after the fact. That is the habit to keep. Do not buy instant noodles based on the smile on the packet. Flip the package. Read the sodium number. Check whether the noodles are fried. Look at whether the product gives you a real base or just a flavor system that hides a weak one. If you are shopping for an older parent, a spouse, or yourself, the cleanest rule is to treat instant noodles like an occasional convenience, not a backbone meal. Once a week is a very different story from 3 or 4 times a week. The repeat pattern is where the sodium and oil start to matter most. That is where the quiet damage starts to add up. If you want the simplest rule, here it is. The more the product has to hide, the more carefully you should read it. If this video changed how you look at instant noodles, tap like so more people see it, subscribe to Golden Menu for more grocery label breakdowns, and leave a comment with the brand that surprised you the most. I read those comments because they show me which labels are still fooling people at a glance, and if there is a packet in your pantry right now, turn it around before you boil it. The back of the package is where the truth starts. Before you boil another packet of instant noodles, pause for 1 second and look at the brand name in your hand. The front of the package is built to make the bowl look easy. The back of the package is where the numbers live. And in this category, the numbers tell a very different story from the marketing. Welcome to Golden Menu. Today we are looking at 10 instant noodle brands that deserve a second look, then 2 that actually held up when we checked the ingredients, the sodium, the processing, and the recall history. This is not about acting like instant noodles are some kind of crime. It is about knowing which bowls are carrying a heavy salt load, which ones are built on fried noodles and industrial oil, and which ones have a history that should make any careful shopper slow down. If this kind of label breakdown helps, tap like now and subscribe to Golden Menu. We turn grocery labels into plain language so you can shop with more confidence and less guesswork. If you are older or you are shopping for someone who is older, this matters even more. Blood pressure, kidney function, and heart health do not care whether the package looks harmless. They care about sodium, oil quality, and what is actually inside the bowl. Before the list starts, here are the 3 things to watch for. First, sodium. Some of these bowls are close to a full day of sodium in one serving, sometimes before you eat anything else that day. For anyone on a low sodium plan, that is not a small detail. That is the main event. Second, fried noodles. A lot of instant noodles are pre-fried so they cook fast and keep longer on the shelf. That sounds convenient, but it also means the noodle itself can start out carrying oil that has been heated and reheated during production. Third, the seasoning packet. This is where a lot of the strongest flavor comes from, and it is also where supply chain problems and recall history can show up. A strong smell does not mean a clean ingredient list. A familiar brand name does not mean the sourcing is clean either. Keep those 3 clues in mind, because the first few brands are going to look very ordinary, and that is exactly why people miss the problem. Most people do not buy instant noodles because they think they are healthy. They buy them because they are fast, cheap, and predictable. That is why the category works so well, and that is also why it deserves a harder look. A product can be convenient and still be loaded with salt, fried oil, and a seasoning system that hides more than it reveals. The goal here is not to shame convenience. The goal is to make convenience honest. Number 10. Maruchan Instant Lunch. Maruchan Instant Lunch is the bowl so many people have trusted for years. White foam cup, cheap price, quick meal, no thought required. That is the whole appeal. But the cup itself is the first problem. When boiling water hits a foam container, you are not just heating noodles, you are heating the package. That means the bowl is not a neutral bystander. It is part of the meal. The sodium is the second problem. 1 cup lands around 1,200 milligrams, which is already close to or above what many older adults should want from a single meal. That is, before lunch, before dinner, before anything else on the same day. The package makes it feel like a tiny snack. The label says otherwise. The third issue is the noodle itself. These noodles are pre-fried in industrial oil, so they can be shelf-stable and fast-cooking. That process is efficient for the factory. It is not a gift to your body. Every time you make it a regular habit, you are stacking salt and processed oil into the same bowl. If this is the brand sitting in your pantry, the easiest upgrade is simple. Do not eat it directly from the foam cup. Move it to a ceramic bowl, use less seasoning, and add something real, like vegetables or egg. But even with that fix, this is still a bowl that asks you to accept too much sodium for too little nutrition. Cheap does not mean harmless. It just means the cost is hiding somewhere else. Number 9. Nissin Cup Noodles. Nissin Cup Noodles looks cleaner than it used to. The old foam cup is gone in many versions, and the redesign makes people think the food inside must have changed too. That is the trap. The package looks more modern, but the formula still carries the same old pattern. The sodium is still around 1,160 milligrams per cup in standard versions. The noodles are still pre-fried. The seasoning is still built to hit salt, fat, and umami at the same time. That matters because packaging shapes expectation. When a product looks refreshed, shoppers stop questioning it. They assume the redesign means improvement. In this category, a prettier cup can hide the same old nutrition profile. The body does not care that the graphics are cleaner. The body only sees the load. You can also see the same convenience logic at work here. The product is designed to be cheap, fast, and easy to like. That is why it shows up in lunch routines, office drawers, and late-night meals. It is not there because it is the cleanest option. It is there because it is one of the easiest options to trust at a glance. If you eat this one, use the same rule every time. Flip the cup before the lid comes off. Read the sodium number. If the number looks high, that is not an accident. That is the design. Number 8. Indomie Mi Goreng. Indomie Mi Goreng has a loyal following for a reason. The noodles are satisfying, the seasoning is sweet, salty, and rich, and for many people the flavor is tied to home, memory, and comfort. That part is real, but tradition does not erase what regulators found. In 2023, multiple food authorities flagged trace amounts of ethylene oxide in specific Indomie flavor shipments. That led to recalls and testing in several markets. Ethylene oxide is an industrial sterilizing agent. It is not what most shoppers expect to find anywhere near a seasoning packet. Once a brand has that kind of regulatory history, it is worth paying attention instead of brushing it off as a one-time administrative issue. Then there is the oil. Mi Goreng noodles are pre-fried in industrial palm oil. That is standard for the category, but it is still part of the story. Reheated oils break down over time. The compounds that form are not the same as fresh cooking oil. This is one reason instant noodles can feel heavy in a way that is hard to explain until you look at how they are made. Sodium is the third layer. Depending on the variant and how much of the seasoning you use, a single pack can still carry a serious salt load. This is where comfort food becomes a quiet problem. It does not hit all at once. It shows up when a bowl like this starts becoming a routine instead of a rare meal. The lesson is not that the brand has no value. The lesson is that memory is not quality control. If you keep it in rotation, use part of the seasoning, add greens, add protein, and do not let a nostalgic flavor convince you that the chemistry changed. Number 7. Mama Shrimp Tom Yum. Mama Shrimp Tom Yum is one of the easiest brands to underestimate because the smell feels so convincing. Open the packet and you get that flash of lemongrass, lime, shrimp, and warm spice. For a lot of people, that smell is the whole reason the bowl feels special. It sounds like real Thai flavor. It feels like real Thai flavor. But the part that hits your nose first is often built from synthetic aroma compounds, engineered to vanish almost as soon as the packet opens. That is the trick. The front-loaded smell makes the product feel authentic before you have even eaten a spoonful. By the time you are halfway through the bowl, the strong top note is gone, and what remains is a flatter broth held together by powdered flavoring and artificial layers. The opening burst does the selling. The rest of the bowl has to live off that first impression. This is also why the product can feel more premium than standard instant noodles. It is not just flavor, it is a performance of flavor. The seasoning is designed to create recognition fast. The smell says one thing, the actual bowl says another. If you are trying to make a better version at home, the path is not complicated. Use a little of the seasoning packet, then add actual shrimp or tofu, lime, herbs, and vegetables. Suddenly the bowl starts tasting like food instead of chemistry with a memory attached to it. The smell at opening is not proof of quality. Number 6. Samyang Buldak. Samyang Buldak is famous because it turned instant noodles into a challenge. The black packet, the cartoon chicken, the heat, the videos, the dare. It is one of the most recognizable instant noodle products in the world. And that fame is part of the problem, because the brand can make people forget they are still eating a processed bowl with a very intense ingredient profile. In June 2024, Danish food authorities ordered recalls of specific Buldak variants after capsaicin levels were found high enough to raise concern about acute poisoning risk for vulnerable consumers. That is not a casual note. That is a formal public health response. The product was not just uncomfortable. It crossed into a zone that regulators thought deserved intervention. For younger people, that might sound like a dare gone wrong. For older adults, it is a different story. A bowl that pushes hard on capsaicin can trigger nausea, stomach pain, sweating, elevated heart rate, and a level of strain the body does not need. When you combine that heat with a sodium load that often sits around 1,200 to 1,300 milligrams per pack, you get a meal that works the body hard from two different angles at the same time. That is why this one does not belong in a regular rotation. Once in a while, maybe. As a challenge, maybe. As a normal dinner, no. There are easier ways to have flavor without turning supper into a test. Number 5. Nongshim Shinramyun. Shinramyun is one of those brands people defend from muscle memory. It has global name recognition, strong broth, real vegetable texture, and shelf space in both mainstream grocery chains and Asian markets around the world. Recognition like that can feel like quality. But recognition is not a test of safety. In 2023 and 2024, food authorities in Taiwan and other markets detected ethylene oxide in seasoning packets linked to Shin Ramyun. The same industrial sterilizing chemical had already surfaced in other instant noodle supply chains. Once that kind of finding shows up across more than one market, the question is no longer only about one lot. It is about how deeply the supply chain is being monitored and how quickly contaminated ingredients can move before anyone catches them. Then there is the sodium. Some variants reach about 1,800 milligrams per pack. That is a full day of sodium for many people before any other food enters the picture. If someone already manages blood pressure, heart health, or kidney function, that number alone should make them pause. This is where a lot of shoppers get caught. The brand feels familiar, the flavor feels established, the bowl feels normal. But a normal feeling can hide a very loud number on the back of the package. The brand does not get safer because more people know the name. It gets safer only if the sourcing, testing, and formula actually improve. Number 4. Ace Cook Hao Hao. Ace Cook Hao Hao has a quiet reputation in many Vietnamese communities and in Asian grocery aisles. It is inexpensive, familiar, and easy to keep on hand. That is exactly why it deserves scrutiny. The less dramatic a package looks, the easier it is to overlook what is inside. The first problem is sodium. Common flavors sit roughly between 1,100 and 1,900 milligrams per packet. Even the milder versions often land between 1,500 and 1,800 milligrams. That is not a small seasoning adjustment. That is a full meal carrying a heavy salt load. For older adults, that matters because blood pressure control does not improve when the daily sodium budget gets swallowed by one instant bowl. The second problem is the oil. The noodles are pre-fried in industrial palm oil, and like every large-scale fried noodle product, the oil can go through repeated heating cycles before replacement. Heat changes the oil. It breaks it down. It creates compounds that make the product taste older, flatter, and more processed, even when the package still looks fresh on the shelf. The third problem is supply chain chemical flags. Food authorities in Europe and Asia have flagged specific lots from Vietnamese instant noodle manufacturers for ethylene oxide residues in seasoning components or imported spice ingredients. Some of those findings led to targeted recalls. When that kind of thing appears, it means the issue is not only one package. It is a sign that the supplier system may not be tight enough to guarantee clean results across all runs. One problem would be enough. 3 together is a pattern. And once a pattern shows up, the smart move is to step away from habit and pick a bowl that does not ask your body to absorb all 3 at once. Number 3. Jin Ramen. Jin Ramen is the quiet one. It does not shout. It does not burn. It does not make you sweat before the first bite. That is exactly why so many people trust it. It feels gentle. It feels safe. It feels like the sensible choice in a wall of louder instant noodle brands. That feeling is the trap. Common Jin Ramen servings often carry between 1,800 and 1,980 milligrams of sodium per packet, depending on the variant and the serving format. That is higher than many bowls people already treat as obviously intense. The product seems mild on the tongue, which makes people eat it more often. The body, however, does not care how mild it tastes. It cares how much sodium is arriving every time you open the packet. This is one of the most important lessons in the whole video. Mild flavor does not mean mild impact. In fact, a mild product can be more dangerous from a habit point of view because it does not warn you to slow down. Spicy noodles scare people. Gentle noodles get normalized. One becomes an occasional dare. The other becomes a weekly routine. That is how the quiet one wins. And because it looks harmless, nobody at the table thinks to question it. That is why it is so easy for a product like this to become part of a steady meal pattern, especially for older adults who want something soft, quick, and easy to eat. If you are watching sodium, the calmest bowl on the shelf can still be one of the heaviest in the body. Number 2. Otogi Ramen. Otogi Ramen works by the same quiet logic as Jin, but the production story gives you another reason to pause. The branding is calm, the experience is soft, and nothing about the package tells you to scrutinize it. That is why it can slide into a weekly routine without much debate. People assume that because it tastes easy, it must be a safer everyday bowl. The numbers do not agree. Standard servings can land in the 1,800 to 1,980 milligrams sodium range. For someone who has already been told keep daily sodium closer to 1,500 milligrams, one packet can exceed the entire target in one meal. That is not an edge case. That is a real mismatch between the bowl and the body. Then there is the frying process. Otogi noodles are flash fried in palm oil to build texture and shelf life. In mass production, frying oil is heated repeatedly before replacement. As that oil ages, it breaks down, the quality drops, the compounds change. Even if the change is hard to notice in one bite, it matters across time. There is also a practical issue that rarely gets enough attention. Some lower-cost noodle formulations are built for a firm or oily strand that holds up in storage, but that does not always translate to an easy eating experience for older adults. If chewing or swallowing is already a concern, the texture can be part of the problem. A product can look soft in the bowl and still be awkward in the mouth. This is the hidden pattern again. Quiet packaging, heavy sodium, fried noodle base, and a meal that feels ordinary enough to repeat without thinking. That is how a harmless-looking bowl becomes a regular source of excess salt and processed oil. Number 1. Maggi. Maggi is number 1 not because it is the most dramatic package on the shelf. It is number 1 because it carries a documented history that changes how you look at every other bowl on this list. In parts of South Asia, West Africa, and many other markets, Maggi is not even just a brand name. It is the word people use for instant noodles. That kind of trust takes generations to build. It is baked into family habits. It is tied to childhood. It is treated like a pantry constant. That is why the 2015 testing in India mattered so much. Government testing found lead above permissible limits in multiple Maggi noodle samples. Not a vague concern, not a debate over interpretation. Above the legal threshold. The result was a nationwide ban, a massive recall, and a public food safety crisis that did not disappear just because the brand was familiar. The broader lesson is bigger than one event. A brand that can move millions of packets before a serious contamination problem is caught has already shown you something important about oversight, supply chain control, and the limits of consumer trust. Once that kind of record exists, nostalgia stops being a defense. It becomes a reminder of how easily a trusted name can outgrow the systems meant to protect it. And the sodium problem still stands on its own. Maggi-style packets can carry a heavy salt load through powdered flavor bases that hit the bowl fast. That means the product is not only carrying old history, it is also delivering ongoing nutritional strain for anyone who eats it often. That is why Maggi sits at the top of the avoid list. Not because it is impossible to enjoy once in a while. Because the combination of documented contamination history and everyday sodium load is too serious to ignore if you are trying to make a smarter pantry. One more thing about a history like that. Food safety problems are not only about one bad day in one factory. They are about whether the system caught the problem early enough and whether the brand could prove it had tightened control afterward. That is why a famous name is never the finish line. It is the starting point for a closer look. Now for the two that actually held up. Better option number 2, Lotus Foods Rice Ramen. This is the kind of brand that solves the main problem before the seasoning even matters. The noodles are made from rice flour and are air-dried rather than deep-fried. That one choice removes the industrial frying oil problem entirely. There is no need to start the bowl with degraded fat already built into the noodle strand. That difference shows up in the way the bowl feels. The ingredient list is shorter. The formula is easier to read. You are not looking at a long stack of additives doing the work that real ingredients should be doing. You are looking at a product that is closer to a base and less like a chemistry project. The sodium is also more manageable than many of the brands on the avoid list. That does not mean you ignore the label. It means you finally have a bowl where the numbers do not immediately scream at you. For anyone who wants a quicker noodle meal without starting from a fried base, that matters a lot. The smartest way to use it is simple. Keep the seasoning partial, add vegetables, add lean protein, and use the noodles as the base instead of treating the package as the entire meal. That is how you turn convenience into something that works with your body instead of against it. Better option number 1, Nissen, RAOH. RAOH was built for one reason: